name is Joe, and I'll be your tour guide. Anybody down for the air conditioning or the history? This mine closed in 1966, as with all the other mines in the Scranton area. There are no more working mines in this area. Just right now, very little demand for this type of coal. This anthracite coal probably is the biggest reason. Now remember when it was a working mine, they had no lights strung out. It was pitch dark down here. You couldn't see your hands in front of you. No boards between the rails which you're walking on. No red ash leveling it off. Very dark, very dangerous. This contraption you see here called a jalopy or an electric mule. Now, they once had live mules working the mines for many years, up until around the 1920s when the mules were being replaced with the electric mule. If you notice, it runs a little like a trolley car. You can see that arm extended up in the front. As we're walking through the gangways, you'll see pipes sticking down from the roof along the sides. They once supported a thick bare copper wire, which also ran to the surface where they would power this here electric mule. This would pull the coal cars everywhere you see tracks throughout the mine. This here is a man trip car, what the miners came down the slope on. They didn't have that comfortable, the only car you folks came down on. Boards lightly tipped, this way they can sort of brace themselves when they're being pulled up or lowered down the slope. The light you see shining behind me in that pit, nothing more than a mechanic's pit, where they worked on these cars underground year-round. Rather than fight the elements on the surface, very cold winters and hot summers, temperature stays the same throughout the years. You feel it right now. It very rarely ever changes, between 48 and 50 degrees. So they work right underground. Their early means of communication, back in the early 1900s, when they came out with telephones, as you're passing by, you can take a look at this one passing on the top right here. A little bigger than your cell phone. Folks, be careful right here. This is a low roof area, so to duck down as you're passing through. In the 1800s, early 1900s, they had no child protection laws protecting children from working underground. Children started working underground here at the age of 10 years old.
Oh my word.
They continued to work their way up until they became miners. Provided they lived that long, many disasters in these mines, many of these children lost their lives. In 1900, 20% of the workforce underground were children, 16 years of age and younger.
Oh.
Here you can see a 15-year-old boy called the mule boy or the mule driver. He was paid 13 cents an hour. They worked 12 hours a day, 5, sometimes 6 days a week. They started their shift 6 in the morning. They came underground when it was dark. They went up at 6 o'clock at night it was dark. No daylight saving time back in those days. So the only time these young fellas seen daylight, if they were lucky, maybe off on a weekend. Now his job was to lead a mule or mules through here, sometimes working up to a team of 6 mules, depending on the number of cars he had. He was only equipped with a carbide lamp on his hat, not a light bulb. He had a little exposed flame, probably equivalent to a birthday candle. That's all the light they had to see. Very deceiving, with all the flood lamps lighting up. But remember, it was pitch dark when his little flame burned. In his hand, you see as I have here, is what's called a sprag stick. These cars had no brakes. You would have to slow or stop this car in a certain area, naturally so it didn't run over the mule. By getting that sprag stick, jamming into the spokes of the wheel, or maybe between the track and the wheel to slow it down, using a couple more to completely stop it. But as I said, pitch dark, only a little flame burning. Sometimes he slipped, went in too far, that car ran over his fingers or his hands, severed his fingers or his hands off. Many of these boys died from infections. They had no antibiotic or treatment back in those days. Mules never left the mine. They lived their entire life underground. Usually stable close to an entrance, easy access to bring food down, where they had stable boys about his age, feeding them, watering them, and cleaning up after them. Also, wooden tracks were used when the mules pulled the cars, later switching over to the trolley tracks when they came out with the electric mule. As you're walking down, if you look to your left, that's a natural opening called the fault. That opened up millions of years ago, possibly by a volcano, maybe an earthquake, or a glacier. So if you want to take a look in there. This room here is what they call an airlock chamber. And they had to control the airflow in certain gangways where they had their exhaust fans. You can hear the noise on the other side of the door, nothing more than an exhaust fan which is sitting up there on the surface. But if this gangway were left open, that exhaust fan would pull the air through here, possibly pulling some methane gas or explosive gases into other chambers. So they had to control that airflow. Usually they placed heavy barnwood type doors across the gangways. Placed a young fellow in here called a nipper boy. His age, 10 years old. Paid 11 cents an hour, sat down here in the dark, 12 hours a day, 5, sometimes 6 days a week. His only job, listening for the cars rumbling down the tracks. As he heard them quickly get up, open those heavy wooden doors, let the cars pass through, then close the doors again. He was only equipped with a coal oil lamp, same as a carbide lamp. That emitted a flame equivalent to a birthday candle. Although most of these boys, they couldn't read or write because they quit school very early in life to start working for these mines. Not underground here, but on the surface, about a mile away, they had what you call coal breakers. They started there as breaker boys at the age of 7 years old. Worked their way underground at the age of 10. Notice the red sign fastened on this prop. Here's the second opening, also another exit out, emergency exit out. This here is the air shaft. You can hear that fan which is directly above us, about 250 feet on the surface. That's where bullets of air is being pulled and taken up. You can see this round pressure plate located close by that fan on the surface, maybe about 10 yards away. There's a large round yellow cylinder made of similar to what, I don't know if anybody recalls, about 10, 11 years ago, there must be some Chilean miners with a capsule similar to this. This one here is a little larger. But in the event there was an explosion or cave-in, they couldn't reach the slope or another exit. They would gather back here. As you're passing by, you can look for this problem. You see a chain. Usually they had signals above. You can pull that chain. Signal the hoist operator slowly passing down. Signal again, you can take it up to the surface. This here is your emergency exit out. If anything would or should happen to that yellow car, which unfortunately sometimes it does break down, this is where you want it right here. So this probably it did happen about a year ago. We did have to evacuate the people out this way here. So, but after the tour, if you would care to take a walk down and look at it, feel free to do so. So to give you some idea, what type of force this van has, if you feel that draft, I sometimes ask the young lady to volunteer, which I did, to take your helmets off and have a helmet. But you don't have a hood to cover your back your hair, do you? Just step right in the center there, a little water coming down, then it'll go right. Thank you. The miners were as fortunate as we seen back in the high coal area. Maybe if they got on the wrong side of their boss or foreman, he placed them in what they called monkey holes or monkey veins. As you can see why this opening here is only about 3 foot high. Some of these openings only 2 foot high. So the way they spent their 12-hour days, 5-6 days a week, mostly on their hands and their knees, possibly on their backs. You can see the miner there on the left side, sort of crouched down on his back. Over here on the far right side, you can see him sliding around on his stomach. Absolutely no room to stand up. But what you're looking at here once was a solid vein of coal mined up many years ago. Again, it extends up about 250 feet to the gangway above us. Still, they placed their props in as a warning if that roof started to settle down. Now you can see the miner here on the right side, pulling up another extension for what's called a shaker chute. Again, this here is powered by electric. As they place the coal in, this would shake or vibrate, working that coal down to a car which is sitting here on the tracks. In the 1800s, early 1900s, these miners would have to wrap rags around their knees to help protect their knees from being all cut and blistered. It wasn't until much later in the 1900s somebody came up with the idea for knee pads. They would then strap these onto their knees to protect them. And again, you can see the pegboard fastened on the wall with the miners' names listed. You can see pegs alongside their name. That's the way they get track of the miners when they went further into work. Also at times called the firebar chain, as you're passing by, you see him. I explained his job a little earlier. He would come down about 3 in the morning with his lantern, checking for any gas or any roof collapse. Usually he'd work his way back to the shanty about 6 in the morning when the miners were lined up waiting for their job assignments. He would assign them their jobs. They would then begin to peg in. At the end of the shift, the section foreman, his relief man, because the fire boss started earlier, he would check that board. If he found any pegs still left in, he would have to go back and find them. Maybe they were overcome by gas, possibly an explosion or cave-in, make arrangements to bring them out, whether they were dead or alive. As you can see, he had a pretty easy day. Maybe another little door attached, possibly had some kind of heat in there. Maybe you catch up on some paperwork, lean back, take a little snooze, surf the web, watch TV. Yeah, you tell the folks, be careful, there's a pipe sticking down right there, watch you don't walk into that pipe. If you look directly in front of me where my light is shining, that there is a solid vein of anthracite coal right through the picture. Another start of a monkey vein, which I expect would go up 250 feet to the gangway above us. Now the money was in the coal, and in the rocks, and they never bothered to move the rock. Before they had gas, electric, or oil heat in their homes, most people heated their homes with this coal. They had coal furnaces in the basement. Before they had gas or electric stoves in the kitchen, they had coal stoves in the kitchen. Women used coal to cook with and also heat the house. The old locomotives, the steam engines, burned this for fuel. Ships burned it for fuel. Industry used it. Many used it years ago, up until maybe around the mid-1950s. It started to take a turn. People started converting over to different sources of heat, different kitchen appliances. Diesel engines already coming into the picture. Ships were burning other fuels. It slowed down to the point where miners were being cut back on their days and their hours. No longer being able to support their families, they started moving out of this area, the surrounding states, or maybe the Philadelphia or New York shipyards looking for other work. No more big profits for the coal owners, or the coal barons as they were called. These mines were all shut down, as I said, by the mid-1960s. Not that there's a shortage of this coal by any means in these hills. They could probably mine it for the next 100 years. But right now, just very, very little demand for it. Does everybody enjoy the air conditioning? Mm-hmm.
Thanks for watching our trip to the Lackawanna Coal Mine. Have a great day.